Hi, this is Austin. Today I would like to share how to create multiple time modes in Excel. First, I have created a command button to call a user form where the total time left is displayed. Secondly, since I have a few tasks, so I'm going to create another two user forms to attach to their respective tasks with their respective time allocation. Since this is designed that the user is able to click on this task only if the thing is started. So we have to first set the command button to invisible, which means that under the visible we set to false, so that the user is not allowed to click on these two buttons before the thing is started. Now let's proceed to the coding part. These are the user forms that I created. For the caption, let's say we want to show a specific wording, then we just have to click the user form and go to the caption and type the words accordingly. And let's say we don't want to display anything, we can actually ignore because this is not important since it's not involving in any part of the coding part. If let's say we want to have specific name for each user form, then we just have to type accordingly. On top of each user form, I use label to display the time left. If let's say we want to change the label to with sunken effect, then we just have to change the special effect to sunken. Of course, we can change the font and the font type according to our preference. Then for the first user form, I created extra two command buttons. One is to allow the user to choose whether want to pause or resume after pause. One is to allow the user to reset everything or simply end the process. Before we proceed to the coding part, three important things we have to take note. Firstly, the show model of each user form must set to false. This is to ensure that everything will be shown correctly on the user form. Secondly, we have to make sure that the start position is changed to manual. This is to ensure that the user form is not overlapped when showing. So what we have to do here is simply take a desired left position, for example 400, and for the first user form I set to with top 210, and for the subsequent user form we just have to add the height. For example, we will take 210 plus the height of this user form, which is equal to 108, and become the top of the second user form as we can see here, and we plus again the height to become the top of the third user form. For the left, we just have to make sure everybody same since we want to align to the same position. And lastly, the thing that we have to take note here is for the second and the third user form, as we can see, we are not using time 0 as the first user form because we are going to include the time 0 in our coding part. So to avoid any error, we have to make sure that the second user form and the third user form is not using time 0. Now we should proceed to the coding part. First, double click on sheet 1 and we first choose command button 1. Recall that we have previously set two command buttons on the sheet 1 to invisible. Since everything already started, so we have to make sure that the command button is now visible. So we have two command buttons here, we have to set to visible. So equal to through, and we copy the code and paste and set for the other button. So after we have finished this part, we should now set a time to the user form 1. So user form 1 dot label, we are using the label and the caption to display the time. So we have to make sure that the format is correct. So hour followed by minutes followed by seconds. Since this is just for illustration purpose, so we don't have to set a long time. Just for testing purpose, after everything is fine, is correct, then only we set to the desired time. So of course, we have to call the user form to display and show the time. After that, we have to decide an indicator for us to use so that we can ask Excel to pause or to run or to count the time left. So we can make use of the command button on the user form 1. So we are going to use this command button to ask the user to let the Excel to know whether we should pause or we should resume. So since we are going to use these two verbs, so we are going to use the verbs as indicator. So user form 1 dot command button 1 dot caption, the words that appear on the command button. So we have resume and pause. Since we want to start to count the time, so we have to use resume. And we are going to use a module to run the thing. So we are going to have two different sub here, two different procedure. One is for us to check for the wordings on the command button. One is to perform the loop to count the time. So we can have the one to check for the command button. We use name of total. This is optional, so we can use any name that we like. Make sure that it's exactly the same as what we want to call. Otherwise, we'll result an error. So basically, the coding part for the first command button is done. Now we should proceed to the second command button. So what we have to do for the second command button, also the same, we have to assign the time. We don't have to reset the command button to visible since already done in command button 1. So what we have to do, we just have to set the time. So to set a time for command button 2, we have to take note that since user form 1 will show the total time left, so which means that user form 2 and 3, the time should be bounded by user form 1. So we have to take note of this. So we have to use condition. So if user form 1 dot label dot caption, the time that on user form 1. So for example, if let's say we want to set a time for this command button 2 is 20 seconds. So if let's say user form 1 is now less than 20 seconds, we cannot exceed the time that the command button have. So what we have to do, we have to make sure that user form 2, the label will also have the same time as user form 1 so that it won't exceed the time. So if let's say user form 2 is less than this time, then of course we will use back the time that we allocate for user form 2. So user form 1 dot label 1 dot caption. So else we will have the time that we want. Since we want to have 20 seconds. As we can see using this code, so if let's say the time that user form 1 have is less than, then of course we cannot use 20 seconds anymore because the maximum time should not be more than this. So we have to use whatever time appear on the user form 1. Okay, then of course we have to call the user form 2 and dot show. Let's continue command button 3. So what we have to do here, just make it simple. We can copy and paste from command button 2. Because it's similar, what we have to do, just change the time that we want to allocate. For example, want to change to 10 seconds and to the respective user form. So user form 3, 3, and 3. So basically, the coding part for all the command buttons is already done here. Now we should proceed to the next part. We'll have to move to user form 1. So for this button, we just have to call the function total. So as spoken, everything that we have to refer to this indicator. So we just have to call this indicator and we check what should be run for. So if let's say what we have here, if user form 1 dot CommandButton 1, since this is the indicator, so every time we have to refer to this indicator to check what should we run for. So let's say currently with the word pause, then we need to assign a dummy so that we can call the loop that we want. So we need public a as Boolean. So we have to set to false. Why we have to set to false? Because false, which means that we have to stop performing the loop. Should not count the time anymore. We should stop here. Take a pause. Okay, once we set a pause, of course we have to let the user to choose if they want to continue or resume. So we have to set back to resume, so that when the user see the word resume, okay, and the user can decide want to click the button or not. If click, then we continue. If not, then we'll still in the mode pause. So user form 1, we can also use different color so that it's more attractive. Dot back color equal to VB green. So resume, give a green signal. We should continue. Okay, else what we have to do? We should have, since if let's say not pause means that the button currently is resume. If resume, of course we have to turn to pause so that if let's say the user see the word pause, they can think and choose where they want to pause. So pause, and we have a red color. So now we should set the dummy to true so that we can continue. So what we have to do, we are now going to write the loop to count the time that we have. So we start with if, of course we have to end with if. And this is the project that we are going to write for the looping part. Now let's proceed to the looping part. So we need to give a title. So remember, the name must be exactly the same as what we want to call here. So continue. Since this is for looping part, so we are going to use do loop. So do while A. So when A is true, we are going to do this. When A is false, then nothing happens. Should take a pause. Stop there. We are going to use condition. So if user form 1 dot label, so this is the main timer that we have. So since this is the start timer that we have, if let's say it's already time 0, which means that everything should end. So we should not do anything. We should unload all the user form. So if let's say it's already 0, so means that time is already up. And of course we can give alert. So the bit sound, then we can give message box saying that time is up before we unload all the user form. If not, the user don't know what's happening. Then what we have to do, remember to set A as false. Otherwise, the loop will still continue to do, then we will obtain error because it's negative time. Then we want to unload all the user form. Of course, we can unload user form 1, unload user form 2, unload user form 3, unload one by one. However, let's say we have 10 user form. That is fairly annoying to write so many. Then we just use for loop. For each user form in what is user form? This is what we call the Visual Basic in application. So Visual Basic VBA dot user forms. What we have to do with this user form, we want to unload all the user form. Then finish the first one. Of course, we proceed to the next. Then what we have to do, we have to now set the command button on sheet 1 to invisible. Since it's already times up, and they shouldn't be able to click the button anymore. So we have to set to invisible. We are not going to use enable equal to false and neighbor equal to true, because when using loop, this might not be happen immediately at the point that we want. So which means that after everything already done, after the macro already finished running, then only appear the thing that we want. So this is meaningless for us to do that. So we are going to use visible and invisible. It's better. The result is better. So we have also for command button 3. This is if the first user form is times 0, which means that the whole process is already ended. However, let's say only a certain task. So which means that we need to create another condition. Else if, so only the second user form. So second user form dot the label dot caption is equal to 0. Remember, the format is very important to minimize the chances of getting error. Then what we have to do, unload only user form 2, because only task 2 the time is up. So we should unload only user form 2. Then what we have to do, sheet 1, the command button that attached to this user form should turn to invisible. False. How if let's say we have the user form 3 only? So we copy and now we paste. So we should change to user form 3 and user form 3 and command button 3. Make sure the one that link we set nicely. Otherwise, our result may not be nice and the one that we're looking for. So else, since already checked whether the time is already 0, means that we should stop somewhere somehow. Then now, since it's not all of them, means that the time is supposed still running there. Then we have to make sure that we should make use of application.wait so that we have the exact time that we want. So now plus 1 second. So we are going to reflect every second. So AM. So this is 1 second every second. Then what we have to do for all the user form update. So for each user form in VBA.userForms. Remember to use do events to update, otherwise the time may not be reflected correctly before the macro is entered. So we have user form dot label. As we can see, if let's say we did not put any number here, since we are using user form for each user form. So we are not able to see the suggestion given by the Excel. So if let's say we worry that we will have syntax error, then doesn't matter, we just put a number first. After we already completed everything, that only we remove the number. So this is one hack that we can consider, so that the syntax everything is correct. It's equal to format. We are going to use day at to update the time. In terms of second, so -1, reduce 1 second for every second that we pause. So user form 1 dot labor 1 dot caption. So this time -1 will be the new time that we have. Then remember we need format, hour, minutes, and second. So remember to remove the number. So for each user form, so remove the number. And then recall that we may ask for the first user form. We already called the first user form, but the user did not call the second user form. Means that the user not intended to start the subtask. Then what we have to do here is the second user form may not appear. If let's say we just run every time the time is passed by, then this might be an error because the user form is not there. So Excel don't know what to do. Then what we have to do, we have to create another call on error, resume next. So this can avoid the error from happening. So if let's say the user form is not available, then Excel will just ignore and look for the user form that available. So it will help us to run for the correct one. So next, and end if. So we start with if, of course we need to end with if. So finish the first user form, then we press it to the next. Okay, then what we want to perform loop. So we loop. So basically it's already done here. Then double check again. So what we have here is for the user form 1. So since the first button is already set to call the total to check for what we look for, this is just an indicator. Then how if let's say we want to refer to the second button? So this is just simply want to end the process. So we can make use of the code end. That's it. Just make it simple. So we want to end the process and everything ended. So now we should see the result. Let's see the result. So we click on start. So it's the time that we want, and the two command buttons are now visible. So we have a pause button and reset button. So when we click on pause, as we can see, it's pause and resume. So we still continue to count. Since the second button that we set is 20 seconds, so as we can see, when we set, it's already same because it's already more than that. So cannot be more than that, should be exactly the same. How about the last command button? As we can see, will still be the same. So once done, time's up, everything will be set back to the original. So how if let's say we start the game, now we will click the time immediately. So we will have the time, the exact time that we want. So pause. So as we can see, stopped, pause, and we resume. So both resume at the same time, and we click for the third one. So we will check. This is almost 5 seconds left. Then we will see whether this will disappear first. So as we can see, this disappear and disappear. So for the last one, we still have to wait until the last second. And then we're done. Okay, that's all for this video. Thanks for watching. Hope you like this. See you.